we finally have some specifics about what to expect from Cities Skylines 2's next patch and a timeline for modding. And while there's some good news, it's not all great. Let's jump in and take a look. They opened this week's update by saying that they've had some in-depth conversations with their publisher, of course Paradox Interactive, on the priorities and goals for Cities Skylines 2. And the broader goals remain the same. They want to bring modding support, console versions, expansion pass content to be worked on and released during the year. However, during what they call great discussions, emerged one change: that modding support will now gradually roll out as features enter beta, and they won't be waiting instead to collect them all up and release it all in one bundle. That's good news, of course, because it means we'll be getting our hands on things sooner. The bad news is, as we'll discuss, the timeline is quite extended. Let's take a look at the detail, then we'll move through and talk about some actually really nice specific details about the first game update for this year as well. So drilling down into modding, what do they say? They say in practice it means that mod creators will get early access to the modding tools as soon as the code modding and Paradox mods are ready for testing. Paradox mods in this case referring to their platform for the distribution of mods. They say that if everything goes as planned, a public beta version, the code modding and Paradox mods, will be available a couple of weeks after those mod creators get that early beta access. They say they'll keep working on it as it will require a bit more attention. Map editing is expected to be available sooner than asset editing, but at this time it comes down to iteration time and the feedback that they're getting on the usability of the tool, a vague way of saying more stuff to be done. They say that asset editing is unfortunately suffering from technical issues, and as long as players are unable to save and share the assets, there's no point in publicly releasing those tools. They say that they have a plan for fixes, but it might take months in the worst case. And then they drill down even further into the depths of detail to summarize the priority in kind of a timeline. There are 4 points, and as you can see on their screen, the first one is targeted for the end of March this year, 2024. Point 1, the public beta or beta version of code modding and Paradox mods. That's the end of March. The second point is a public beta version of map editing, available in the live build together with code modding or soon after. No specifics there, of course. The third point, public beta version of asset editing, to be announced. Only after technical issues are sorted can they roll out that tool. And finally, the fourth point, they will continue to work on modding support and get out of beta stage during the Finnish fall. That is, shall we say, optimistically September, and roughly 1 year after Cities Skylines 2 initially launched. So it would be fair to say that the targeting here around its release has ballooned out from perhaps initially the expectations being at release or shortly thereafter to now 1 year after. And that's why I mentioned in the introduction that we've got good news, that we're going to be able to get our grubby little hands on things, but the bad news is it's going to take longer than expected, and even longer than after they updated us on what to expect, and now even longer after that, with that final release out of beta with all of the tools and the modding platform, Paradox mod, the asset editor, the map editing, releasing sometime around September, perhaps October of this year. They wrap the section on modding by saying that they're going to keep resources on modding support throughout the entire lifecycle of Cities Skylines 2. Of course, we don't know specifically how long that may be. Cities 1, however, years and years. They say that there'll be many improvements and feature requests that they can keep working on to help modders achieve their goals even after the initial beta release, and I'm assuming after the initial full release there as well. Now let's move through to talk about some other things, not quite as related to modding. Console versions and the expansion pass are where we'll start. They say that work on the console versions is ongoing, but of course gated by the modding support, but they say that they're making progress. They're not committing to any specific timelines, as there are, quote, too many unknowns at this time, but we'll keep you updated and we'll communicate the moment we have something to share, end quote. So, unfortunately, console fans, nothing new there for you, and of course, this is probably not the first time you're joining me in one of these videos, so you've likely heard me talk before about that gating, the fact that the console versions won't be released until there's that sort of console version of modding ready to go. Now let's move through to the final main point of the update, some specifics around what to expect and when to expect the next patch. Specifically, there's one more coming out before what they call the bigger releases, those modding updates that we just discussed. After they release this next patch, they say that they'll include bug fixes and performance improvements in those bigger updates. The next one though, patch 1.0.19, is going through its first round of quality assurance testing at the moment and will be released after it passes those checks. Of course, the full patch notes will be available the day it goes live, but they do give us at least some little hints at what to expect. Actually, quite specific ones. They say that we can expect fixes for stuck maintenance vehicles, and an additional fix for abandoned dogs, who will now be returned to their homes. They say the work still continues on land value. They have an improvement, so pollution properly affects that value though. And lastly, but certainly not least, they're currently testing a fix for the tax bug with crazy high or negative numbers. And finally, there was that note about the expansion pass when we talked about the console updates. They said, essentially, this is now on track and we should be able to, no, not should. They say it's on track and they'll be able to do it. Of course, it has already once been delayed by around 1 quarter. This stuff was initially meant to release, I believe, in Q4 of 2023, but they delayed it because the game was in the state that it was in, and they didn't feel comfortable releasing this kind of stuff, I think. Now, what are we expecting? Well, in Q1 2024, that's sometime February, March, we're expecting the Beach Properties Asset Pack and the Deluxe Radio Station 2. Obviously, mainly it's that Beach Properties pack. This will be our first taste at some different looking buildings to put inside of Cities Skylines 2, a very welcome improvement. We're also, of course, still waiting on those creator packs that they teased a long time ago from 8 different regions. No update on those today. And that concludes today's video. As I say, a mixture of good and bad news. We're getting something, but it's far, far later than we initially ever expected. And it's disappointing for me to see this kind of saga of Cities Skylines 2's disappointments, failing to meet expectations, continue out now, seemingly longer than it was going to before, which was already too long. I do actually really enjoy the bones of the game here, the base game. It's fun to build a city. I enjoy building the cities that you watch in these clips, but this saga really needs to be brought to an end. Thank you so much for joining me today for these specific and nice and detailed updates for Cities Skylines 2. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you wonderful people next time.